Hi, in this video I'm going to be teaching you how to do long division, 2-digit divided by 1 digit. I have broken down two problems into one that will have a remainder and one that will not have a remainder. So we'll start with the problem that will not have a remainder. On the side here I have written our 4 steps for long division. D for divide, M for multiply, S for subtract, and B for bring it down. As I go through each problem, I will reference these steps. The first step in long division is D, which stands for divide. So the first question I have to ask myself is, how many times can 3 go into 9? Another way to ask that is, what is 9 divided by 3? I know that 3 can go into 9 3 times without going over. So I put a 3 on top of the 9, and I have just completed the first step, divide. Now the next step is multiply. So I need to multiply 3 times 3, which is 9. So I put a 9 below the other 9. And then I'm going to go to my next step, which is subtract. So I'm going to subtract 9 minus 9, which I know is 0. My next step tells me to bring down the next number. So I'm going to bring down the 6. And now that I have completed that last step, I need to repeat the steps. So I go back up to divide. And I ask myself, how many times can 3 go into 6? Another way to ask that is, what is 6 divided by 3? I know that 3 can go into 6 2 times without going over. So I put a 2 on top of the 6. Then I go to my next step, which is multiply. So I multiply 3 times 2, which is 6. I'm going to subtract these two numbers. That is my next step. So I know that 6 minus 6 is 0. Now my last step is to bring it down, but I have no other numbers to carry down. So at this point I am done. My answer is 32, and there is a remainder of 0. Now when I move over to this problem here, I repeat the same steps. The only difference here is that there will be a remainder at the end. So if I go to my first step, divide, I'm going to ask myself, how many times can 2 go into 8? Or another way to ask it is, what is 8 divided by 2? I know that 2 can go into 8 4 times. So I'm going to write a 4 above the 8. Because I know when I multiply, which is my next step, 2 times 4 equals 8. Then I need to subtract. 8 minus 8 equals 0. I'm down at the bottom step, bring it down. I need to carry this 7 down. And now I am back to repeating the steps. So I go back up to divide. How many times can 2 go into 7? Or another way to ask it is, what is 7 divided by 2? Now I know that 2 cannot go into 7 evenly. However, I have to ask myself, how many times can 2 go into 7 without going over? I know that 2 can go into 7 3 times. 2 times 3 is 6. If I would have chosen 4 here, 2 times 4 would have been 8. And that would be too big because I cannot do 7 minus 8. So now I'm going to subtract 7 minus 6, and I know that is 1. My next step is to bring it down, but I have no other numbers to bring down to the bottom. I have a remainder of 1 down at the bottom, so on top my answer is 43 with a remainder of 1. When you're doing 2-digit divided by 1 digit, if your first step has a problem such as this, if I have 29 divided by 4. My first step would be to ask myself, how many times can 4 go into 2? Well, I know that 4 cannot go into 2 because 4 is bigger than 2. So I need to move to my next digit, and I need to ask myself, how many times can 4 go into 29 without going over? I know that 4 can go into 29 7 times without going over, because 4 times 7 is 28. When I do my subtract step, because that is next, 9 minus 8 is 1, 2 minus 2 is 0. So now I have to ask myself, are there any other numbers to bring down? Which they are not. So my answer would be 7 with a remainder of 1. So when you're doing division and your number on the outside is bigger than your first digit on the inside, you have to move to the second digit and ask yourself, how many times can this 4 go into the whole number 29? I highly recommend learning your multiplication facts. That is going to help you the most with doing long division.